Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Peter Diamandis said, "Disruption is the price of progress. If you're not disrupting, then you're being disrupted." Well, on today's episode, we talk about disrupting ourselves, being one of the bold ones, what you need to know to stay relevant and competitive, and more. My guest is a husband and father, a globally recognized innovation strategist and disruption expert, a partner with Queen Rook, where he advises leading organizations and executives on disruptive trends. He's a best-selling author and a wildly popular keynote speaker who was named in Forbes as, quote, best virtual keynote speaker I've ever seen, end quote. He's been recognized as Edify's top 40 under 40, and his latest book, The Bold Ones, is ranked number 5 on McKinsey & Company's top books on decision making. His work and interviews have been featured in various media outlets, including Forbes, The Globe and Mail, The Guardian, CBC, and CTV. Please welcome the man who's obsessed with challenging the status quo and who's helping all of us become bolder and truly indispensable, Shawn Kanungo. Shawn, it is so great to see you. Thank you for being here today.
Wow, what an introduction. Let me tell you, that was one of the best introductions that I've ever heard. I'm super excited to be on this show with you. And by the way, before we begin, I think it would be it would be really important for everybody, because Jay's putting in a lot of work here, okay? So if you could rate, follow, subscribe, whatever you got to do with this show, please do so. It's going to help him a lot, because listen, he's putting in the work, okay? He's putting in the work, and I'm just excited for this conversation.
Well, as am I, and thank you for that. I'm very grateful, and Shawn is absolutely right. Please do comment, rate, leave us a review. We'll talk about that at the end as well. So, Shawn, let's dive right in. First, I mentioned this before we started to roll the cameras and mics, that researching you, consuming your content, watching your keynotes and the information that you put out on social is so. It's been so insightful for me. And talk about someone who puts in the work, someone who is focused on the details and always looking for ways to deliver value in a very impactful and connecting way. You definitely do that, and I know our audience is going to feel that throughout this conversation. So let's dive right in. I thought a good starting point for us would be for you to share one of those defining moments that many of us experience in life that can change the course of our lives. It can change the trajectory of our careers as well as our personal lives. So what is one of those moments that you've experienced?
Well, thank you so much, by the way. Yeah, really appreciate the kind words, Jay. And, as I reflect back in my career, one of the most important moments, one of the most pivotal moments of my life is actually when my father passed away. When my father passed away, he was running a 200-person accounting firm, or 200-client accounting firm, and he died a couple days before the tax season was over, and he was like a tax accountant, and I had to take over his firm, take over his clients, and that was a pivotal moment for me. But really the pivotal moment was really watching how people treated my father. They were grateful, they were kind, but when somebody dies, everybody sort of rushes to your house. It's like chaos for 2 weeks, and you almost feel like a sense of community, a sense of family when everybody is around. But the shocking thing for me was, and the thing that sort of defined my existence to this day, is that after those 2 weeks, everybody went off and they went back to their own lives. They had their own lives. They went back, and the house was empty. And to me, it was this idea that number one, life is short. Number two is that you never know when it's going to end. So you might as well make the most of it and try to innovate and try to be bold. And number 3 is that actually, even in death, people care about you during that moment, but afterwards, they're not thinking about you. They forget. And actually, that can be incredibly inspiring. That the idea that no one really cares about you at the end of the day. They care about you for that moment, but then afterwards they go on. Everyone goes on. And that actually can be incredibly inspiring, because I think the biggest reason why we don't do what we want to do in life is because we are fearful of what other people are going to think or what people are going to say or whatever else. And no one is really thinking about you. So go off and do that thing. And to me, that was a pivotal moment in my life, because that changed the trajectory of how I operated the world. And so that's what I would say to that.
Well, thank you first for sharing that story. There's a couple threads that I want to pull on, but since you brought this up, and before I ask you my next question, as you talk about life being short, that's a philosophy that I think about every single day. As a matter of fact, you may have seen these before, but I carry this coin with me at all times that I got from Ryan Holiday, and it's around memento mori. And on the back side of the coin, it says, you could leave life right now. And I carry that with me as a constant reminder about the importance of taking action, the importance of saying the things now as opposed to waiting until tomorrow or the next day or the next day, right? If we're not willing to do the thing right now, this is the only moment that you and I, right now, the words that we're speaking to one another, this is the only moment that we actually have. We don't know what's going to happen next, right? So thank you for sharing that. I think it's an important reminder of the value that we place on life and to squeeze the juice out of every moment that we possibly can. So with that said, and wanting to tug on a couple of strings. So first, as you were sharing the story about your father, were you already working for or in your father's business doing any type of work prior to his passing? Or did you step in not having any experience in that area?
I had a little bit of experience, but to be honest with you, not that much. I was working I was working at Deloitte at the time and had a little bit of tax experience, but it was very limited. I had no ambitions to take over my father's business at the time, and so I was basically thrown to the wolves at the time, and that was good because it allowed me to step into this completely uncomfortable, uncertain position, and it tested my limits. And from there on, I always ask myself, like, can it get worse than this? Like, I remember every single day after that, because I was still submitting like people's tax returns, even though I probably shouldn't have been. And every single day for 7 years, I would dread going to the mailbox because I would get a note from, like, I'm in Canada, so the CRA or the IRS, saying that you have illegally submitted all these tax returns. Like, I was dreading going there. So, I went in with very little experience.
So what did you learn about yourself through this process when you knew that you needed to take responsibility for this, jump in, not having the experience or very little experience in that area, and really trying to learn the business, get to know the clients, etc.? What did you discover about yourself?
It's a great question. To me, it's the idea of, embracing the darkness, like embracing the uncertainty. And, many of us look at darkness as the enemy, but really darkness can be your friend. It is, the darkness can, you can find out your limits. And to me, what I learned about myself is that maybe I had a set of limiting beliefs of what I could do. And when you're thrusted into an uncomfortable position or an area of uncertainty, you can actually thrive even with no prior experience or knowledge or expertise in a particular area. You can do it. And I've been trying to take that idea throughout my entire life, getting into positions, getting into environments that I have no business being in, and seeing how I can swim. And that has been incredibly impactful for my entire life. And to be honest with you, before my father died, I was floating. Like I was playing ball hockey. I had a fine job. But I didn't know what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was living very comfortably. I was soft, Jay. Like I was naive. I was soft. And that really pushed me to embrace the darkness.
Yeah, that really is an interesting conversation and something to explore. So since you brought up limiting beliefs, I want to ask you something around beliefs. So as you think back over your early years prior to your father's passing, let's go, fairly early in life, what was something that you believed about yourself that you discovered later wasn't true?
Oh my God. I think there's so many things. Number one, it's this idea that there's a certain number of, jobs in the world, there's a certain number of positions in the world, and then, somebody just has to fill it. The idea that somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder and, hand you this path, when really the world is at your fingertips, and it's for you to take those opportunities and to create them yourselves. The new industries, the new companies, the new positions, the new roles should be created by you, and they're always changing. Even like simple things like what we put in our body, how we think about health. Like for the longest time, my mother was like, finish. Maybe this is like a South Asian or immigrant thing, which is like finish your plate, and then you're trained to like finish all your food on your plate, because we spent all this money. But then later in life, you're like, actually, to gorge yourself with all this food is not a good idea. Maybe to conduct some intermittent fasting. There's so many things, but I think the main piece is that the number one piece that I see now is that we, as human beings, are trained to be in these assembly lines. We are trained to be a cog in this giant wheel. And we have trained so many professions to be assembly lines. We have assembly lines of accountants and marketers and brokers and doctors and engineers. Everything is an assembly line. We have engineered our society for optimization and efficiency. But what we haven't really done is it showed people how to explore, how to play, how to experiment, how to take adventures, how to do things that are outside of what people are doing today. And to me, that's where you get the most growth. That's where you get innovation from. And we are not taught that. And to me, that was that was the biggest unlock for me, is that, wow, my entire upbringing has been about efficiency and optimization. And I'm still trying to unlearn, how do I get out of that mindset?
Yeah, that's incredibly interesting. As you telling that piece of the story and sharing those thoughts and ideas, that assembly line mentality, obviously that worked at one phase in our history. As a matter of fact, our entire educational system was built around that type of philosophy, right? It wasn't built around challenging ideas and creativity and innovation, all those types of things. And now, fortunately, and there are plenty of anomalies, right? There's always examples that you can find throughout history, and you've identified many of those right in your book, but there are always going to be examples of those who were outliers, who thought differently, who did challenge the norms, who did challenge the status quo, because that was what they did. That's how they were wired. And they created amazing changes in the world, right? Amazing ripples. So, and we're going to talk more about that, but it's so interesting how we can get caught in that type of thinking. And sometimes it takes a mentor, sometimes it takes a book, it takes a conversation, it takes an amazing teacher to be able to open your eyes and have you realize that there is another way. And we're at a place in history and time right now that if we are not innovating, if we are not disrupting, if we're not doing things differently, we are not going to be able to walk forward. We're just not going to be able to create the kind of success that we want. And it's not a viable solution to not do those things. So we're going to certainly dig more into that for sure. I did want to ask you something before we go a bit further. And that is, what's a personal philosophy or a specific value that is internal to you that drives your key decisions in life? It could be personally and professionally.
Recently it's because maybe it's because I have 3 kids and I got a ton going on, which is and I've learned this throughout the last number of years, which is hell yes or no, which is when you agree to do something, whether it's a call, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a project, whether it's whatever it might be, make sure that it's a hell yes or don't do it at all. I have the great fortune of having a ton of opportunities thrown at me, which is great, and I'm blessed to have them. But what I've realized about myself is that if I'm not 100% in, if I'm not completely passionate about what it's in front of me, then I shouldn't take it. And I've actually had that realization over the last number of years. I've invested in things that I maybe wasn't completely 100% in, and that hurt the business, and it took away my time, and I every time this thing would come up or things would come up, I'd be like, you'd be like, I got to do this thing. So to me, it's like hell yes or don't do it.
Yeah, that's a brilliant personal philosophy that is so incredibly helpful, and it kind of speaks to establishing boundaries and knowing the things that we should be saying yes to, the things that we should be saying no to, and realizing that for everything that we say yes to, there's also something that we have to be able to say no to. And the inverse of that is also true, right? So I love that hell yes or no, and that really helps.
What about you, by the way? What are your personal philosophies? Because I'm trying to, to be honest with you, I know you're learning from me. I want to learn from you too and get some advice on what you're doing.
Yeah, so mine is, I'm very specific around establishing boundaries. I'm also very specific around the way that I start the day. So I wasn't always this way, Shawn, but I have learned over the years from experience and just wisdom poured into me by others that if I can at least control the things that I can control, which is how I start the day, right? Before that first phone call comes, before that first email comes, before that first meeting, taking care of myself, my mind, body, my spirit, the way that I show up to the world. Those things are incredibly important to me. Not for anyone else. They're important to me, right? They're important for me to be able to set myself up, to be able to control, or at least manage my emotions so I don't get pulled into things that are going to take me down a rabbit hole or take me off my game. So those are a couple personal philosophies, knowing my boundaries and controlling the things that I can control. Those are just incredibly important to me, and they've enabled me to be able to do so much more with my time and with my energy than I could ever do before.
Love it. Okay, so we're on the same path. But
yes.
Your mornings must be really serene. My mornings are a little crazier, but we'll have to dig into that later.
Yeah, absolutely. So how has fatherhood changed whether it's the personal philosophy, that hell yes or no, or just the way that you view the world. So pre-children, what was Shawn like? And post-children, what is Shawn like today in terms of the way you view the world and the things that really are important to you?
Yeah. It's a great question. And, having kids is incredible. And my wife and I were always like talking to each other about this. They're like, are we the only people that are like this? Which is we're always like, man, we're so grateful to have our kids. Like our kids are great, and of course they can be chaos. Of course they can, they're doing the craziest things every day, and you're like making sure that they do the couple things that they need to do before they get to bed. I got a 6-year-old, I got a 4-year-old, and I got a 5-month-old. So, it's obviously a really busy household. I think the most important thing for me having kids is being a great role model for them. I think you're way more zeroed in around your particular actions and what you are showing them as opposed to what you're telling them. Because, growing up, you see your parents and they might tell you certain things and that might stick with you. But what you're really remembering is the 1,000 other things that they're doing outside of telling you, their movements, their how they interact with others, what they're putting out in the world, the energy that they're putting. That is what you are absorbing every single day. And to me, I want to lead them not just with my words, but with my action. And I think one of the greatest gifts that you can give your child is showcasing that you are still moving, you are still exploring, that you are still on this adventure. And God bless my friends with peace and love. I see many people living for their children and they've somehow stopped their own dreams. I want my kids to know that I am still dreaming, that dad is an old man, but he's still dreaming. He's exploring. He wants to learn. And I want my kids to see that at the end of the day, because I think that's what life is about. It's to have fun, to dream, to explore, to learn about yourself, to unlearn. And I just want to be I want to do that for my kids. And previously to that, before I had kids, I'd never had that mindset that my actions, not only my words, but my actions could impact other people. But now I see it. And so that has been a important piece for me. So that's like not only, it's like staying healthy. It's going to the gym. It's meeting the right people. It's pursuing and failing things that I want to do. So there's so many elements to it. It's the idea that you have this like documentary film crew in your pocket. And not only do you have a documentary film crew in your pocket with your phone, but your audience is your kids. They're always watching you, no matter if you think they're watching you or not. So to me, that's incredibly inspiring and motivating.
Yeah, it truly is, and what a beautiful way of articulating that. And you're so right. I think about I have one child. Mine is now 30, and I recall trying to do the best that we could, being intentional about the way that we were raising him, the information that we were pouring into him. And I got to tell you, at this stage in life, I learn more from him watching his actions, looking at the way that he moves through the world and the way that he thinks about making decisions and the things that he acts on and overcoming his own fears and any insecurities that he has. Just observing that and watching that, I learn so much more from him than I believe I ever gave to him. And I'm blessed to be in that position to be able to see that and have that kind of perspective. And so it really is amazing. And the thing that I love, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you're a number of years ahead of me on this. Give me some advice on how to raise really great children, because I'm I'm always hungry for advice and insights from folks like you.
So, look, I am certainly not an example of what the best parent looks like, and there's a number of reasons behind that. But I will say this to you. If there is one thing that I've learned, it is to be a good listener and ask really good, meaningful questions. Not surface level questions, but
Right.
meaningful questions to really understand how your child thinks, how they think about problem solving, how they think about the people that they're surrounded by, and just giving them the space to be able to answer, to explore, to follow their curiosity. So those are some of the key things that I have been able to look back now and say that, you know what, I think we did a pretty good job there. And also recognize the fact that you can only do but so much. A child is going to become the person that they're going to become. You can provide so much to them, but you also have to realize that they're their own human being, and let them be the person that they're meant to be. Let them to discover their own boldness, their own way of showing up to the world. Respect
Love
it,
that.
appreciate it, be grateful for it, and love them as much as you can.
Love that. Great advice. Fantastic advice.
Very good. So I want to dive into your latest book, your new book, The Bold Ones. I mean, what a fantastic read. So,
Oh, wow. I really appreciate that.
oh my gosh, in this book, and you've done so much research on this, which I absolutely love, but in this book, you really do provide a blueprint and a breakdown of the tactics and strategies for becoming a disruptor, right? All based on lessons that have been learned from some of the world's most extraordinary disruptors. So before we delve into some of the key areas of the book, please share with our audience what it was like for you to bring this book to life. Why was this the spark that you said, I have to do this, right? I have to be able to bring these words and these stories to life.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I've had this part of the reason why I wrote this book is because I saw this power shift happening from institutions, from organizations to individuals. And to me, it's the reason why I left my corporate job to pursue this path. It's the reason why I have bet on myself throughout my entire career, is that I believe that the individual is the most powerful entity in the world. And I feel like still to this day, people don't recognize the power of the individuals. Like, bold ones have changed history. It's the individuals that have changed their organizations, they've changed industries, and they have ultimately changed history. And I wanted to put something together that would take individuals across history, from pharaohs to pirates to folks that are disrupting the world today, to showcase how they did it and how they are doing it in different ways. And my belief is that every single person can be a bold one. Every single person can make a dent in this universe. And I just feel like it's fighting against this idea of the assembly line mentality. I wanted people to grab a hold of this, and it's the reason I've like dedicated my entire life to this idea of innovation and disruption. And I wanted to put something together that was truly me, like authentically me, taking things from history, from sports, from academia, and putting something together that is, that's a great read, but can inspire people to go off and be a bold one and to create history.
And I just want to share one of the things that I love about your writing, and just the way that you show up, the way that you communicate, the way your message lands with people. not only do you do a great job at presenting and the information that you created and wrote in this book, but you also attach the actions to it, right? So I created a video today, actually, just before you and I went live about this, about the importance of, number one, thought, right? Because the thought starts everything. So anything that we want to do in life, anything we want to achieve, anything we want to attract in our life, any area we want to disrupt, whether it's just disrupting ourselves, disrupting an industry, it all begins with a thought, right? But nothing happens until we attach action to that thought. And you do a really good job of helping us move into that action step so we can actually see something happen. You know, it's one thing to have an esoteric idea or, you know, a textbook that provides great examples and great information, but if we don't do anything with it, right, then we really, all we've done is we've learned something, but we haven't made change. Does that make sense?
100%. 100%. And to be honest with you, I don't want to take full credit for that because my editor, she pushed me. She's like, we need to make this more tactical. We need to make this more action oriented. So, and it was like my tactics were in the first draft when I gave in the manuscript to McGraw-Hill and worked with my editor Scherr. Like we worked together to make it more tactical and actionable. So I can't take all the credit in like making sure that was implicit in the book, and I'm so happy that we worked together to make that happen.
Well, Cheryl, if you're listening right now, you did
Please.
a great job. Thank you so much for the help that you provided. But Shawn,
yes.
it makes such a huge difference. So I want to thank you for that because that is a game changer. So you provide in this book, and in the time that we have, we won't be able to go through every aspect of it. And obviously, we're going to share the links in the show notes where everyone can go out and purchase a copy for themselves. But you do provide 8 unconventional pillars to success. So would you briefly share with our audience what those pillars are and maybe pick 1 or 2 that just resonate with you in this moment and give us a bit of context around that pillar. Why is that one that you chose and why is it so important?
Yeah, well, listen, there's way too many to go through. So I'm just gonna pick one because I wanna provide value for this one. You know, one of my favorite parts of the book is the second chapter, which is the idea that success is a pitfall. And I'm picking this one because I think with your particular audience, the folks that are listening to this they're business executives, they're leaders, they're folks that are, I believe, that are high performers. They're at the top of their game. And the idea that success is a pitfall is that we get really romantic about our own success, our own expertise, our own knowledge, and our own identity at the end of the day. And that's the thing that traps us. That's the thing that doesn't allow us to go down the mountain. Listen, everybody wants to go up the mountain, but very few people are willing to go down the mountain. And you're thinking to yourself, why would I go down the mountain? Well, the reason why you want to go down the mountain is because there are other mountains out there that are waiting to be climbed. We get so stuck on that top of the mountain that we're at that we don't even see the other mountains that are out there. We don't see the other opportunities and possibilities that are out there. And we get trapped with our own, with this identity of how successful we were in the past. And so I list some tactics in that particular chapter around how you can fight your own status, like how you can place yourself in lower status situations. Come off the bench, hand out the cookies, come off, do things that are what many consider as lower status, like being on the ground floor is where you get the best insights. Ideas on how you don't get trapped with your own your own expertise. So how can you continuously explore and experiment other technologies or other areas, other domains, so that you are constantly having a pulse of what's happening around you. So to me, the idea of success is a pitfall. It is one of the most important chapters. And the reason why, to me, it is one of the most important chapters is because I've spent my entire career working with leaders and executives. And what I see holding them back is not their own expertise. It's not their brilliance. It's not the fact that they're not open. It's not the fact that they don't see it. It's just that they're afraid of losing what they have today. And if you read any chapter in the book, I recommend that you read that one, because that's how you disrupt yourself ultimately.
Yeah, that is so good. And you said at the beginning of our conversation, when we were talking about your time at Deloitte before you dove into your father's business, that you were comfortable, right? There's something to be said for that. But when we're comfortable, that's not where growth happens, right? That's where we almost put the brakes on and sit back a little bit. We appreciate what we've done. We appreciate the success that we've had, but we're not really pushing the envelope. It's the growth happens when we're uncomfortable, right? When we are pushing ourselves against that comfort zone and continuing to expand and growing our skills and building new habits and new behaviors, those things that are going to help us expand, be around different people, different ideas, right? Constantly challenging ourselves and doing things differently. And that is what I see. That's what I get from that chapter and from what you're talking about here.
100%. And I fundamentally believe that when you are comfortable, when you're in the pocket, when you're sitting on top of the mountain, that is the most vulnerable place to be, and the most dangerous place to be, because that's where you accept mediocrity. And listen, for many years, for many decades, many centuries, it was fine. You could accept mediocrity. But with what's happening today and how the world is changing, we have generative AI coming out. Like you can't sit in that. You can't sit in the middle. You cannot be mediocre. Mediocre is the most dangerous thing that you can do today. So to me, it's imperative that you continuously challenge yourself and try to innovate and try to create value in the world, because it's too dangerous to sit in the middle. And I fundamentally believe that those that are way too comfortable, they're going to have a huge shock in the next number of years. The world is about to change.
You are so right. It's changing before our eyes. So give our audience an example. I'm sure we can all think of a business, but think of a business that you've researched that was one of those who thought they were at the top, right? Who became comfortable, who wasn't watching what was going on around them, and who was incredibly vulnerable and was in a dangerous spot and ultimately became irrelevant.
I mean, there are classic examples of this, throughout history, which is, everybody talks about the Kodaks and the Blockbusters of the world. But to me, I would take it. I'm going to use an example of individuals. So, and that's part of the reason why I wrote the book. One of the spaces that I'm really passionate about is the media space. And, recently, for example, you saw ESPN, they laid off a whole bunch of folks. ESPN is, one of the most important sports entities in the world. And they just laid off a whole bunch of unbelievable ESPN personalities. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, not only because it's recent, is because at ESPN, when you make ESPN like the pinnacle of sports media, you're on top. This is this is your dream job. And for many people, that is the top of the mountain. But what people haven't realized is that when you are beholden to another company, when all your equity, when all your power, when all your influence is attached to a particular organization, you are the most vulnerable to disruption. And the reason why some of these ESPN personalities have been let go, it's not because they're not great. It's because the market will change at a dime. And whether you are good or not, the market can take everything away from you. And the best thing that you can do in a changing society is to continuously bet on themselves. And the reason why people are starting to build their own equity, their own brand, build their own channels is because they see this unbelievable changing of the landscape where now individuals have the power. That's why people like Stephen A. Smith, who's still an employee of ESPN, is starting his own YouTube channel. It's why he's starting his own show outside of ESPN. It's the reason why a guy like Pat McAfee, who's another sports broadcaster, got purchased, his company got bought by ESPN because he built his own show, he built his own equity, he built his own brand. And so people would think about it, well, you just fired a whole bunch of people at ESPN, people that were really good, had great personalities, but you hired this guy, Pat McAfee. It's the reason why they hired him is because we live in this new world, this new media landscape where now if you have audience, if you have attention, that is power. And he built his own equity and power by doing that. And so that's an example of how individuals are becoming the most powerful entity in the world. And the incumbents have to realize that. Everybody has to realize that. So it's a beautiful example of how even if you're working for an organization, that you have to be able to build your own brand, your own equity, and find out how to play in this new environment, whether you work for an organization or not. And part of the reason why I wrote this book, The Bold Ones, I didn't want it just to be for entrepreneurs and founders and people that are starting new business ventures. I wanted to write this for people that are working within organizations, people that have an employer. You can still build your own power working underneath somebody else. And I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to write this book.
Yeah, that is incredibly powerful. And I believe, as I was going through this, that number one, this seems like you were speaking to yourself because this is exactly what you did at Deloitte, right? I mean, this is, you built brand equity. You did these things. You built your own personal brand. You had an audience, right? You were already doing these things, and it just seems like the wheels were turning, that you began to realize at some point that I'm in a very different place. I'm working for this organization, but I have my own value proposition to open to offer the market. Speak to that for just a moment. Make it personal.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you asked me this because this is the first time somebody's asked me this question. And this is the reason why I wrote the book, is because I was working for one of the best management consulting firms on the planet. They have hundreds of thousands of people across the world, and I felt that I was building my own power in a way because I was able to create content. I was able to showcase my experiences mainly through this vehicle of content, whether it's written or through video or through keynotes. I was able to showcase and sort of now start to build my own audience. And I feel like I was very early in this new world where you have an employee that's building their own sort of brand, building their own brand equity, and they didn't know what to do with a superstar. And I don't blame them. Most organizations today in 2023 have no idea what to do and how to compensate and how to value a superstar within their organization. But what I realized very early on, that the power was shifting, that even though you are part of a large organization, people follow people. And I recognized that clients were starting to come to me. They wanted to work with me, that they wanted, even though they had 100 people at the firm working within their organization, they wanted to work with an individual. And I'm like, wait a minute, what if I could make a larger impact in the world and make more of a dent in the universe by myself? Not that I don't need the firm, but I recognize that I could gain a lot more upside by doing that, by going on my own. And that is part of the reason why I left, because I saw the power shift to individuals. And I saw the power shift to me. And, I made that bet, and I look back at him, and that was the greatest decision that I've ever made. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think that there are organizations that can hold superstars in a way that benefits both of them. And I still believe that there are organizations out there that this is going to be the question over the next decade: is how do you evaluate people that are just different, and they're building their own brand, they're building their own equity? How do we do that? This idea of like the LeBron James and the NBA created this idea of the player empowerment movement. I believe that this empowerment movement is happening in every single industry, whether you are in marketing, whether you're in accounting, whether you're in insurance, that in every firm, every company, you're going to have people that just attract a disproportionate amount of attention and create a disproportionate amount of value. So how do you compensate them? How do you create a performance management framework that works for them? It's going to be really important. So this is the reason why I wrote the book.
Yeah, this is such an important topic, and you, Shawn, you speak to companies all over the world about this very topic, right? You talk about disruption, you talk about AI technology, and all kinds of really interesting things that we should be thinking about as business owners, as business leaders, as individuals who want to disrupt ourselves, right? So we can bring the most value and make change, right? Create the kind of change that we want to see in the world. So I'm curious, as you do your keynotes and you're speaking to these organizations, and this is a very, very difficult topic. You can talk about it. The solutions are going to be ongoing, right? There's things that we can do today, but those things are going to continue to evolve and change. What is one of the most difficult questions that you've received from an audience? You don't have to give the specific name of the company, but a question that you received from an audience member that just you were standing in your tracks like, oh my gosh, how do I answer this question?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many questions that people ask me. It's wild when you do keynotes. People are always asking you all sorts of questions. And to be honest with you, I'm never afraid of saying I have no idea, or I don't know how to navigate this. And to be honest with you, let me tell you the question that I actually asked the most before I get to the question. The question that I get asked the most, and it's related to the question that I couldn't answer, is that the question I get the most is the idea that how do I convince somebody? How do I convince a leader to make a change? How do I convince my leader to innovate? How do I convince somebody else that I'm trying something new? To me, that is the number one question that I get. The impossible question that I've been recently getting that is hard to answer, which is, what do I teach my kids? What should I teach the world is changing very quickly. The world is becoming increasingly more certain. What do I teach my kids around what's important? And I say that's an impossible question because I'm trying to figure it out myself. I'm trying to figure it out for my kids. And I have no idea. Who am I to sit there or stand there in front of thousands of people and tell them how they should raise their kids when I'm trying to figure it out myself? And I think that's a journey that we're all on, because the reality is that we have no idea which jobs, which companies, which industries, which sectors will be relevant in the future. We have no idea. And so we need to hold our hands together and be like, how do we raise these kids in a world that is continuously changing? There are continuous threats to jobs, to the world. What's going to be important? And it's an impossible question to ask and to answer. I always say, I have no idea. Help me. So
as you were sharing that, I was making some mental notes to myself, and I'm trying to put myself in your place with 3 young children, with these bigger questions that you're asking yourself, and the things that you're hearing from business leaders and individuals all over during your keynotes and whatnot. So what do I teach my kids? What can I do? So the couple things that came to mind immediately were, number one, always challenge the norms. Always challenge the norms. Never sit back. Never settle, right? Never sit back. There's something to be said about being comfortable, right? We want enough food. We want to be able to provide for our family. We want a roof over our head. We want to be able to give to the community, give back, do those sorts of things. But never sit back, never settle, and realize that you don't know what you don't know. So always ask better questions. Continue to learn new skills. Continue to challenge yourself to grow and realize that even when you think that you've done enough, even when you think that you've learned enough, you haven't. You just haven't.
Right.
You have to keep asking the questions. So those are just a couple of things that came to my mind. But those are some big questions. So I'm going to ask.
People are asking me philosophical questions standing in front on a stage, and it's funny because like when you're on a stage, you have this like impulse to answer. You have this impulse to like just give someone an answer when 90% of the time you probably shouldn't have an answer if it's not in your realm of expertise. Listen, like deep philosophical questions. For somebody that has 3 young kids about what their kids are going to do in the future, I just think it's like it's too lofty.
Well, the good thing is you study history. And studying history is very important, right? Learning from those who came before us and learning from those who have really been through very, very difficult, challenging situations to think about what kind of mindset shifts did they have to make, right? What kind of things did they have to do to pull themselves out of the things that they were doing on a regular basis to try something different? And what did they try? How many times did they fail? And more importantly, how many times did they get back up, right? So trying to figure those kinds of things out and being a student of not only history, but always wanting to learn, right? Even when we finish traditional school, if we have an opportunity to go to college, fantastic, whatever that happens to be. But realize that when you leave that school building, when you leave that college campus, that's just the beginning of your education.
100%.
It's always the beginning. I think about the martial arts, and I was involved in martial arts for a few years trying to do something to connect with my son. And what I learned from his sensei, who was my sensei at the time, was that when you earn a black belt, that is just the beginning of your education. Many of us think that, that's, you've reached the pinnacle. Once I graduate high school or graduate college, that's it, right? I'm free. I can go do whatever I want to do. Well, it just doesn't work that way. So if we're going to be focused on innovation and iterating and continuing to challenge and disrupt ourselves, it has to include the educational component and sharing your knowledge, sharing what you learn, like you sharing today with our amazing audience, and being able to take the words that we're hearing right now and apply those, figuring out a way to apply those in our own lives and in our own businesses. So I thank you for that. I thank you for sharing of your knowledge and your insights with us. So, Shawn, as we are wrapping up our conversation, just a couple of quick things. I do have all your social handles, places where we can go to connect with you, purchase your book, and consume all your amazing content. So we're going to put that in the show notes. I would love it if you would share a challenge with our audience. What would you, Shawn, challenge all of us, including me, to do?
So that's a great question. And by the way, before we close off and before you take a look at all my stuff, I want you to follow, rate, review, subscribe this pod because Jay is putting in the work. Super important. He's putting in the effort. To me, the best way to challenge yourself is to ask yourself questions. And I think a question that we should all be thinking about is, what is that one truth that we believe in that people haven't realized yet, but in 10 years or in 20 years, people will look back at and say, wow, that is something that I didn't believe 20 years ago, but I believe that is true today. What is that one truth that you believe in yet that no one believes in yet? Ask yourself that question, because to me, because you believe in that, there is that is where the disruptive ideas come from. Those are where the disruptive nuggets are. And if you can unpack that, explore that, turn that into something, find the momentum, find champions around you to believe in that particular idea, those are where we're going to get the most disruptive ideas. And so I would encourage everybody to challenge yourself to find those truths that you believe in that no one believes in yet, because that means you have a disruptive idea just waiting to be explored and waiting for the world to see. So we need more people that can have those ideas come to life. I just love the idea of disruption, and that's where disruption comes from.
I love that. I know I'm not the only one. I know all of you that are watching and listening right now can feel that energy, can feel that passion behind this. So for all of you right now, I certainly hope that you've been taking notes. I definitely have. I have pages of notes right here based on our conversation. Make sure that you go back and you re-listen to this episode more than one time. There's so much great information packed in here. And obviously you want to follow Shawn and pick up a copy of his book, The Bold Ones. So Shawn, here's my final question to you. What is one of the greatest gifts that life has given you that you didn't realize at the time?
Well, I think you mentioned it. You mentioned it earlier. So personally, as an individual, I think for some reason I've been blessed with this energy. I've been, even with a lack of sleep, 2 kids coming into your bedroom last night, one of them sick, one, peed in their pants, and now you're changing the sheets. For some reason, I'm able to show up with energy. I don't know why. I don't know how. And I didn't realize how important this energy was, early in my life. But I realized that this energy is the reason why I'm able to do what I'm able to do. It's the reason why I'm able to put in the effort around the businesses that I'm a part of and my kids. And I'm just blessed that for some reason I've been blessed with this energy that I can sustain throughout the day, and I just hope that I can hold on to it even though I got all these kids. So that's what I would say.
I love that so much. Well, again, it's so incredibly apparent throughout this conversation, and I appreciate that. And as everyone who's watching and listening goes out and consumes Shawn's content, you're going to see exactly the same thing. He is a master at keynote speaking, at capturing an audience's attention, about landing the right kind of messages and moving people to take action. And that's exactly what we want all of you to do, is to take action, right? Nothing happens until we do that. So Shawn, I want to thank you so very much for joining me today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your insights, for bringing that amazing energy, and for bringing your book, The Bold Ones, to life. I'm very grateful for you.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It was an honor to be on here, and I just really appreciate people that put in the effort, that put in the research, like you do. And it's been such an honor. So thank you.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and for listening. And I do have a favor. Shawn brought this up a couple of times, and I'm going to ask again, would you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, leave us a review? Please do. We would love to hear what you thought about this particular episode with Shawn. And to enjoy more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button. And until next time, my friends, keep learning, keep growing, keep looking for ways to disrupt yourself and challenge the status quo. Pick up a copy of The Bold Ones and apply the lessons you learn. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.